Welcome back to the I Just Love Footy YouTube channel. Today we're going to get stuck into my top 8 ladder predictions. Let's see how bold I'm going to be. Number 8, let's start with Port Adelaide. The reason why I've got them there, and it's more of a wait and see to see how their season transpires, the acquisitions of Zerk Thatcher and Radagolia to basically bandage their defensive woes. I don't know if that's going to be the answer. They are both unproven as far as the long term is concerned in AFL. I would suggest Radagolia has shown more promise, but hasn't been consistently featuring in the AFL for extended periods. Zerk Thatcher had a decent season last year, and I think he got the contract off the back of that performance. I just don't know if it's going to be a premier defense that stacks up against the best of the best in the top 8, or sorry, in the top 4, more importantly. So that's why I'm going to have them 8th. I think they've got some really promising youth who are now probably entering more of their prime phase, and they just so happen to have a bunch of integral players in their team within that bracket. Connor Rosie, Butters, you've got Radagolia, you've got Zerk Thatcher, Todd Marshall, Pal Pepper, you've got Georgiadis entering that territory of that peak age, coming off an ACL. Let's see where his season goes. Can he add an extra dynamic to their forward line where Todd Marshall and Charlie Dixon currently reside? Todd Marshall's being good without being great, and then Charlie Dixon's only getting older. He's becoming more and more injury prone. He's been thrown into the ruck, so I don't know if that forward line is going to feature Charlie Dixon as much in the future. Jason Horne-Francis has had a much quieter preseason as far as being in the limelight within the media, and I think that's going to be really conducive to having a really good season for him compared to last season. So there'll be an improvement based off that. Obviously, being young and in AFL system, naturally you should progress. It's just about how you handle that pressure. And considering how much pressure he had to endure over the last couple of seasons, I think that's only built a resilience and a mental fortitude that many young players wouldn't otherwise have, if not to be in a situation that Horne-Francis experienced. Their coach, Ken Hinkley, suggested that he's been training really well, and the AFL world will get a massive shock when they see Horne-Francis in the spotlight this season for his performances and not for other reasons. Number 7, Western Bulldogs. Now, we know what they're good at. We know they have a great forward line. They've got Aaron Norton, the spearhead of that forward line. They've got Uga Hagen, who had an amazing season last year. Sam Darcy's back into the scope of things, played forward in the practice match. So it'll be interesting to see where Rory Lobb stands in this, because the 4-man forward line, or the 4 key tools forward line last year, didn't last long as far as the experiment was concerned for the Bulldogs. And I can only imagine Cody Waitman will further grow into that small forward role that he plays for the Bulldogs. The midfield, we know their clearances kings. They've got McRae, they've got Liberatore, they've got Bontempelli. Even with the absence due to the ACL in Bailey Smith, they're still going to be a top tier midfield. And we saw Riley Sanders, who they drafted in the first round, played really well in their practice match. Accumulated disposals, and already looks like he has a ready-made AFL body to get stuck into the season. Their downfall will ultimately depend on 2 things this season, and this is why I have them at 7th. Their defense. Behind Liam Jones and Alex Keith, they've got Buku Kamas, who typically has been a forward. However, they've got him back into the back line along with Nick Caulfield, who they've secured from St Kilda. Both Buku and Caulfield are around the 6'2" mark, so a bit of extra height there. Not key position type of height, but players who are definitely capable of taking intercepts and matching on players small or tall. So it's not like they're not trying to make adjustments to defense. I'm wondering if Bevo is the man for the job. Is the game plan going to stick? Is that the problem? Is that the team defense not the structure? Is that what is not working for them? So that's why I've got them at 7th. However, their ceiling is much higher relative to other teams in AFL. For number 6, Adelaide Crows, another team who I think have a high ceiling. They were the highest scoring team in the AFL last year, and they didn't make the 8. And obviously that came down to a matter of losing games that they probably should have won, plus the game against Sydney in the last 2 minutes where Ben Keys kicked a goal and they were robbed by the umpires. So with them 2 factors taken into consideration, they probably definitely should have been in the top 8 last year. However, not the case. And now this is a new year, a new clean slate, and you have to do it all again. So I've got them at 6. I think their forward line is getting better. Phil Thorpe has had a really good preseason. Taylor Walker's just getting better and better. Rankin is becoming more comfortable in Adelaide, and Darcy Fogarty is finally showing consistent signs that he can be a key forward in the AFL. As long as their midfield comprises of Rory Laird, Jordan Dawson, Rory Sloane, they've got Sam Berry coming up, they've got Jake Saligo coming up, they're going to be a very hard-pressed midfield to come up against, especially when being visited in Adelaide. Once again, the downfall for another team that I have rated in the top 8, it's going to be their defense. Without Nick Murray due to an ACL, Marquinhos going to miss weeks due to concussion. They've got Duday who's moved to Brisbane. It really does leave a big burden and weight to bear for Jordan Butts and Marquinhos when he does return. Daniel Curtin, who they've picked up in the 2023 draft, will probably have to play a role much sooner rather than later for the Adelaide Crows this season. At number 5, we have GWS. Now, there's not many teams where I say, without that player, they're nothing. But GWS are close to that. And call this a hyperbole if you will, but I think without Toby Green, they are a different team. He has an aura. When the ball comes to him, you know he's going to do something. When the game needs to be won, he always seems to be that person who gets the job done for GWS. Now, I know their defense is great. They've got Jack Buckley, they've got Simon Taylor, great intercepts, great one-on-one plays. They've got Connor Iden, who does an amazing job as a medium defender and arguably one of the better, if not the best medium defender in the league. And I know their midfield is great. They've got Jay Kelly, they've got Tom Green, they've got Cornelio, they've got Finn Callahan stepping up. But I just think without Toby Green, they lack that aura. Opposition teams are probably scratching their heads all week about how they're going to approach the Toby Green matchup. And without that, it just gives a different outlook on how to face a GWS team. Nevertheless, they had a great season last year. I'm erring on the side of they had an overperforming season, but now that they've developed that confidence, that relationship, the continuity with their new coach in Kingsley and understanding a game plan, there's no reason why they can continue to build on that. And we've seen that in previous times, and obviously most recently Collingwood when Fly McRae came over. I'm a big believer that it's not your identity to do certain things until it is, and that was the epitome of GWS's season last year. You know, they were a terrible team for at least half the season, and then they just started winning games, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a prelim final. You can say, they're not a prelim final team, but that's their identity now. So the more you believe that, the more that is going to support your endeavours moving forward. Moving on to the top 4, and at 4th position I have Carlton. Carlton came back from a position in the regular season that no team has ever done before. They were 5 wins, 1 draw, 8 losses, 15th position in round 15, and they found themselves also ending up in a prelim final and developing their identity as a winning team with a winning culture. Now, they will need to improve. It's hard because when a team has done that well and made the prelim final, you ask, what is some room for improvement? Perhaps their centre clearances, because they are first for stoppage clearances. However, they're a middle of pack team for clearances, and Paddy Dow was that type of player who could win you a centre clearance, but we know he's moved to St Kilda now, so I'm not too sure where that's going to come from this year, but those centre clearances should translate into more inside 50s, and I think they were a middle of the pack team for inside 50s as well. So that would be a little key point for improvement for Carlton this season. Ben Mackay, hopefully he can find his position as the right-hand man role to Charlie Curnow. I think he struggled adapting to that last season, so this season will be a real test for him. Sam Walsh and Wiedering both having injury concerns, injury clouds. Sam Walsh with recurring back issues, Wiedering with his calf. So 4th, if they can get their team back and they can work on some key points, as I've mentioned. And if that's the case, then I think 4th is more than reasonable. But I think that's close to their ceiling. I don't think they're a top 2 side in the comp just yet. Number 3, I'm still very optimistic about the Melbourne Demons this season. And I think with all the stories that have been going on in the background in the off-season regarding Oliver, regarding Joel Smith, and also Angus Brayshaw with the unfortunate news that he's had to retire, I think they're really going to hope they're able to manifest and build that energy, allowed it to fester into their training and created a desire to overcome these adversities. That's what I'd like to see from them as a general AFL fan, and that's why I've got them in a 3. They've got a story to write. They're a great team. Statistically, they stand up against the best of the best. Defensively sound. They've got Stephen May and Lever as their defensive anchors. They've got run off the halfback in Bowie. They've got Salem, who's moving into the middle to improve their kicking woes going inside 50, and he is an elite distributor of the ball, so that can only help them with their movement going inside 50. They played against Carlton yesterday, and that worked a charm. They had over 15 marks inside 50 by the third quarter, which last season they were only able to achieve 15 plus marks inside 50 on 5 different occasions for the whole game, and they did that within 3 quarters yesterday. Complementing Christian Salem in that category will be Jack Billings, who they've gotten from St Kilda. He played really well yesterday and had some really nice kicks going inside 50. So that will be the big, I guess, key to their improvement this season. And Van Rooyen and in tandem with Petty, if he's healthy, will be really good for the Demons. I think they're going to improve. I think that's also going to help the synergy between midfield and forward. So good leads, running patterns, and chemistry in the forward line with the likes of Van Rooyen and Bailey Fritsch and Petty. And then once you throw in Jack Billings and Salem and a concerted emphasis by the team in general to lower their eyes and get better kicks going inside 50, that's why I think they're still a top 3 team in the league. Second place, we have Brisbane Lions. I don't think I can put them anywhere else besides that position. I think they're the second best side in the league. I think their adversity they're going to have to overcome is the heartbreak that they've endured over the last 5 years through prelims, through the grand final. It was last season's grand final the final straw to break the camel's back for Brisbane. Let's wait and see. We'll probably find out pretty early how they're going to travel this season. Usually the best way to put behind a grand final like that, or a season in general, is to get the ball rolling early and win games early. And if they can do that, then there's no reason why they can't challenge for a grand final spot again this year. Joe Danaher's in the peak of his powers. Lachie Neale is the Brownlow medalist of last year. They've got Harris Andrews holding it down in the back line. The Josh Dunkley trade worked a charm for them. Will Ashcroft will probably be back late this season, and I think Kitty Coleman is a bolter for the All-Australian team this year. Lastly, number 1, my beloved Collingwood Magpies. I can't have them anywhere else. Call it bias, call it what you want. I think a lot of people outside of the Collingwood faithful would have them in first place this season as well. Collingwood's biggest problem will be sorting out their forward line. Do we go a 3-man key tall forward line with Reef, Brodie and AJ, or do they go just AJ and Brodie? Based on the game against Richmond on Tuesday, they started the first half with AJ and Brodie and then tried out the ladder, AJ, Brodie and Reef in the second half. So that's still yet to be seen. However, in all saying this, because of the way Collingwood moves the ball and how quickly they're able to transition from defense to forward, they get a lot of goals out the back, so it doesn't really matter. It's not imperative that Collingwood have key tall forwards who are able to fire all the time because of the way we move the ball. Obviously in finals like games, the game slows down, and we saw against GWS McStay was able to have an imprint in clutch moments, taking big marks for us. So that's where the downfall can occur, and that is arguably the most important time we do want a player like Dan McStay. But we made it work last year and got the flag and got the job done. Mason Cox and Darcy Cameron can sort of, put on the masquerade as a key tall position forward line player, but ultimately McStay, ideally, if we can get him back, that'd be great. There are talks that he could make it back towards the end of the season, so we'll see where that goes. Defense is holding up. Lachie Schultz, a really good acquisition, great pressure player and can kick goals and accumulates a fair bit of the footy for a small forward who likes to play high up the ground. As long as the goalie Nick Dacos are in the midfield, I'm never really concerned about that. And then as long as Darcy Moore, knock on wood, is healthy, we can build a team around that in the back line. We got Frampton, we got Jeremy Howe, we got Braden Maynard, we got Charlie Dean who's finding his way into the AFL. We got Nathan Murphy. Fingers crossed he stays in the AFL and doesn't retire. We'll see. Anyhow, let me know what you think about my top 8 and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye.